The tray slammed onto the table hard enough to make the glasses shake. A sharp silence followed. Several customers looked up in annoyance, but Mina bowed immediately with practiced politeness.
I'm sorry.
Her voice was calm, respectful, controlled. Inside, however, she felt completely drained. Not ordinary tiredness. Not the kind fixed by sleep or a quiet weekend. This exhaustion lived much deeper than that. It settled inside her chest every morning before work even started and followed her home every night like a shadow she could never escape. The kind that slowly emptied a person from the inside until even smiling began to feel heavy. Park Mina was only 24 years old, but lately life already felt unbearably long. Cheongdam Noodle House was crowded that evening. The small restaurant sat on a narrow street in Seoul between an old dry cleaner and a convenience store with flickering signs that never seemed to work properly. It was not famous or elegant. No tourists came there searching for memorable experiences. It simply served ordinary Korean meals to exhausted people trying to survive another difficult day in the city. Bowls of kimchi jjigae steamed across tables. The smell of garlic, broth, and grilled meat filled the air while impatient customers called endlessly for refills, side dishes, and faster service. "Miss, more water." "Excuse me, we ordered 20 minutes ago. This soup is too salty." Mina moved quickly from table to table balancing heavy trays despite the ache spreading through her feet. She had already worked since morning, and every muscle in her body begged for rest. Her apron smelled faintly of dish soap and soup broth, and her hands had grown rough from endless washing and cleaning. Still, she smiled politely at everyone. Because she needed this job. More than sleep, more than comfort, more than pride. Behind the counter stood Mr. Beck, the restaurant manager. Thick-necked, permanently irritated, and impossible to satisfy. He believed fear made employees work harder, so he criticized constantly and praised almost never.
Mina.
His voice cut sharply through the restaurant noise. She turned immediately. "Yes, sir? Table 6 has been waiting too long. I already placed their order." "Then why is the food not there yet?" Mina swallowed her frustration quietly. 2 workers had failed to show up that evening, and the kitchen was overwhelmed. But experience had taught her explanations only made Mr. Beck angrier. "I'll check again," she said softly. Mr. Beck clicked his tongue in irritation before walking away muttering beneath his breath.
Mina innehållet slowly.
Lately, her entire life felt like endless endurance. Work, bills, hospital visits. Repeat. Her mother had been sick for nearly a year now. Treatments, medications, examinations. Everything cost more money than Mina could comfortably earn. Yet every month she somehow found a way to continue because her mother had sacrificed too much raising her alone after Mina's father disappeared years earlier. Now it was Mina's turn to carry the burden. And she carried it silently. Outside, cold autumn rain had begun falling across Seoul. Customers hurried into the restaurant seeking warmth while icy wind swept briefly inside each time the door opened. Then sometime during the dinner rush, the atmosphere shifted. The door opened again. An old man stepped quietly into the restaurant. At first, nobody paid much attention to him. He looked ordinary enough, maybe even forgettable. His padded jacket was faded from years of wear, and the front of his shoes had begun cracking near the toes. A small cloth bag rested against one shoulder. But there was something unusual about him, something difficult to explain. He moved slowly yet confidently, calmly, like a man completely comfortable with himself regardless of where he stood. His eyes scanned the restaurant once before settling on a small table near the corner. Several customers glanced briefly at him before quickly looking away again. One woman frowned slightly. Another customer whispered something that made his companion laugh quietly beneath her breath. Mina noticed all of it, and suddenly she felt tired in a completely different way. She grabbed her notepad and walked toward him. "Good evening," she said warmly. "Welcome." The old man looked up at her. For a brief moment, something about his eyes unsettled her. Calm, sharp, observant. The kind of eyes that seemed to study people carefully without speaking much. "What would you like to order?" Mina asked politely. The old man gave a faint smile. Something warm, he replied softly. I've been walking for a long time. His voice carried a gentleness that immediately softened something inside her chest. We have doenjang jjigae tonight, Mina said. It's very good in cold weather. That sounds perfect. She nodded and began writing the order. Then another voice interrupted sharply beside her.
Mina.
Her body stiffened immediately. Mr. Beck stood there staring openly at the old man. Did you check whether he can pay? Mina blinked in disbelief. What? Mr. Beck lowered his voice slightly, though not enough to prevent the old man from hearing. Look at him carefully, he muttered. People like this come in pretending to order when they have no money. Heat rushed into Mina's face instantly. The humiliation in the air became unbearable. The old man remained completely still. He had heard every word. Mina knew it immediately. Around the restaurant, conversations slowly quieted as customers pretended not to listen while clearly paying attention to everything happening. Mr. Beck stepped closer to the table. Grandfather, he said coldly, forcing politeness into his tone. If you cannot pay, there are free meal centers nearby. The restaurant fell silent. The old man looked up slowly. Not angry, not embarrassed, just quiet. I understand, he said softly. Then he began pushing his chair back. And something inside Mina broke. Not from anger, from sadness, because she recognized that expression instantly. The quiet humiliation of someone who had suffered enough in life to stop defending themselves. Please don't leave. The words escaped before she could stop them. Every eye in the restaurant turned toward her. Even Mr. Beck looked stunned. Mina stepped closer to the table and took a steady breath. I'll pay for his meal, she said firmly.
Mina.
Take it from my salary. Her voice trembled slightly now, but she forced herself to continue. He deserves to eat. Mr. Beck stared at her like she had lost her mind. You're paying for strangers now? He's hungry. That's not your responsibility. For the first time that evening, Mina looked directly at her manager without lowering her eyes. Maybe not, she said quietly, but I'm still helping him. The tension inside the restaurant became suffocating. For a moment, Mina genuinely thought she might lose her job. Then Mr. Beck scoffed bitterly and waved dismissively before walking away. Do whatever you want. Slowly, conversations resumed around the restaurant. Mina looked back toward the old man. For several seconds, he simply stared at her silently. There was something strange in his expression now. Something deep, unreadable. Please sit, Mina said gently. I'll bring your food soon. The old man slowly lowered himself back into the chair. Thank you, he said quietly, and somehow those two simple words carried more weight than anything else she had heard all day. Outside, rain continued falling heavily against the restaurant windows, while thunder rolled faintly above the city. Inside Cheongdam Noodle House, Mina hurried toward the kitchen completely unaware that the quiet old man sitting alone in the corner was about to change her life forever. The rain grew heavier as the night deepened over Seoul. Water streamed down the restaurant windows while cold wind rattled faintly against the glass outside. Inside Cheongdam Noodle House, the dinner rush had finally begun slowing down. A few customers still occupied scattered tables, quietly eating bowls of soup and noodles while steam drifted warmly through the air. But Mina could not stop thinking about the old man sitting alone in the corner. There was something unusual about him. Even after the humiliation from Mr. Beck, he had not argued or defended himself. Most people would have reacted emotionally. Some would have shouted. Others would have stormed out in embarrassment. But not him. He had simply accepted it. And somehow that made the entire situation feel even sadder. Mina carefully carried the hot bowl of doenjang jjigae toward his table along with rice and several small side dishes. Please be careful, she said softly as she placed the meal down. The bowl is very hot. The old man looked quietly at the food for a moment while steam rose gently between them. Then he glanced back up at her. You added extra side dishes. Mina hesitated slightly. You looked hungry. A faint smile appeared on his face. That was kind of you. She nodded awkwardly before stepping away to continue working. But throughout the evening, her eyes kept drifting back toward his table. The old man ate slowly, not because he lacked strength, because he was present. Every movement felt calm and deliberate, almost graceful. He ate as though he genuinely appreciated the warmth of the meal instead of simply consuming it. Twice, Mina noticed him quietly observing the restaurant around him. Listening, watching, studying people carefully without saying much. Felt strange. Most customers buried themselves in phones while eating or rushed through meals impatiently before leaving. But this old man paid attention to everything. At one point, a young delivery worker entered the restaurant completely soaked from the rain. Before the boy could even speak, the old man quietly stood and offered him the seat closest to the heater. The delivery worker looked startled. "Ah, thank you, grandfather." The old man simply nodded and sat elsewhere without complaint. Mina noticed that too, and somehow it stayed with her. An hour later, the restaurant had nearly emptied. Mr. Beck disappeared into the back office to calculate sales numbers, leaving the atmosphere noticeably lighter. Mina exhaled tiredly while wiping nearby tables. Her entire body hurt. She had barely eaten all day, yet somehow exhaustion had replaced hunger hours earlier. As she passed the old man's table again, she noticed his bowl was completely empty. Even the broth was gone. For the first time that evening, she smiled genuinely. At least someone enjoyed the food tonight. The old man looked up at her, warmth briefly entering his eyes. "It reminded me of my wife's cooking." Something about the way he said it carried quiet sadness beneath it. Mina paused slightly. "She passed away?" she asked gently. The old man nodded once. "Many years ago."
"I'm sorry."
He gave a faint smile. Life eventually teaches everyone how to lose something. The words settled heavily between them. For some reason, Mina suddenly thought about her mother lying in a hospital bed attached to machines and medication lines. About medical bills stacked inside her apartment. About the constant fear she carried every single day without speaking about it. She swallowed quietly before forcing herself back to work. A few minutes later, the old man called softly for her again, but the old man continued searching before finally removing a small folded handkerchief. Inside it rested an old silver pin shaped like a plum blossom. He placed it gently on the table. "For you." Mina blinked in confusion. "Oh no, I can't accept this. It belonged to my wife," he explained quietly. That only made her refuse even faster. "Then I definitely can't take it." The old man studied her silently for several long seconds before carefully folding the handkerchief again and returning it to his bag. "You are an unusual young woman," he said softly.
Mina leghed tiredly.
"No one has ever described me that way before." "That is because most people only notice loud things." His eyes remained steady on hers. "Quiet goodness is often ignored." The words hit harder than she expected. Because lately, Mina had started wondering whether kindness even mattered anymore. The world rewarded wealth, connections, power, not compassion. Kind people usually struggled the most. And yet somehow, hearing those words from him made something inside her chest feel lighter. Before she could answer, thunder rolled loudly outside and the restaurant lights flickered briefly. Several remaining customers looked up nervously. The old man glanced toward the rain-covered windows. "It's late," Mina said softly. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" "Yes." His answer came immediately, but strangely, it did not sound entirely truthful.
Mina hesitated.
For one dangerous second, she considered offering him bus fare or an umbrella despite barely having enough money for herself. But before she could speak again, the old man smiled gently. "You have already done enough tonight." Then he slowly stood from his chair. Mina instinctively stepped forward to help him, but he steadied himself easily without needing support. For someone his age, his posture remained surprisingly firm. Again, something about him felt unusual. Not powerful exactly, just composed, like a man completely at peace with himself. Before leaving, he looked directly at Mina. "What is your full name?" She blinked slightly. "Park Mina." The old man nodded slowly, repeating it quietly to himself as though memorizing it. Park Mina. Then his expression softened. Tonight, you treated me like a human being when others did not. Mina lowered her eyes awkwardly. It was nothing. No, the old man replied firmly. His voice remained gentle, but suddenly it carried surprising weight. It was not nothing. The restaurant became strangely quiet again. Even the rain outside sounded distant now. The old man bowed deeply toward her. Not casually, but formally, with a level of respect that completely caught her off guard. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Mina stood there watching him disappear into the rainy Seoul night. For some reason, an uncomfortable feeling settled inside her chest as his figure vanished into the darkness beyond the restaurant windows. Like the night itself was holding its breath. A few moments later, curiosity pulled her toward the glass. Outside, beneath the heavy rain, the old man stopped near the sidewalk. Then slowly, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone. Mina frowned immediately. Something about that already felt strange. But what happened next unsettled her even more. The old man's entire posture changed. Subtle, but unmistakable. The softness disappeared. The old man said only a few quiet words into the phone before lowering it again. Seconds later, one of the black vehicles slowly moved toward him through the rain. Mina stared through the restaurant window completely frozen. Her heartbeat suddenly felt too loud. Who was he? The old man turned slightly before entering the vehicle. And for the briefest moment, their eyes met through the rain-covered glass. Then the door closed. The black SUV disappeared into the stormy Seoul night, leaving Mina standing motionless beside the restaurant window, completely unaware that by tomorrow morning, her ordinary life would no longer exist. Mina barely slept that night. Even after returning to her tiny apartment in Seoul, the image of the black vehicle stayed trapped inside her mind. She lay awake beneath her thin blanket staring at the ceiling while rain continued tapping softly against the small window beside her bed. Something about the old man unsettled her now. Not because he seemed dangerous, because he seemed important. And those two things were often connected. Who was he really? Why had luxury vehicles been waiting for a man dressed in worn-out clothes? Why did powerful people seem to move the moment he made a single phone call? Mina closed her eyes tightly, trying to stop herself from overthinking everything. But every time she remembered the old man's calm expression, the strange heaviness returned to her chest. Eventually, exhaustion dragged her into restless sleep. Morning arrived too quickly. Her alarm rang at 6, and within minutes she was already preparing for another long day at Cheongdam Noodle House. Life did not pause simply because strange things happened. Bills still existed. Work still existed. Reality still existed. Outside, Seoul looked cold and gray beneath cloudy skies. The rain from the previous night had stopped, but the streets still glistened faintly beneath early morning traffic. When Mina arrived at the restaurant, Jiyeon was arranging utensils near the counter. The moment she saw Mina, her eyes widened slightly. "You look terrible." Mina gave a tired laugh. "Thank you. I'm serious," Jiyeon whispered. "Did you even sleep?" "Not really." Before Jiyeon could continue, the restaurant door opened loudly and Mr. Beck entered carrying supply boxes. Something immediately felt strange. He looked tense. Not irritated. Not angry. Nervous. "Move faster this morning," he snapped while setting the boxes down. "We'll be busy." Mina frowned slightly. Mr. Beck normally behaved like a man afraid of absolutely nothing. Seeing visible anxiety on his face felt unsettling by itself. She tied her apron quietly and tried focusing on work. But less than 30 minutes later, everything changed. A deep engine sound rolled through the street outside. Low, heavy, powerful enough to make nearby windows vibrate faintly. Several customers near the entrance looked outside immediately. Then silence slowly spread across the restaurant. Mina turned toward the window and felt her stomach tighten instantly. 3 black luxury vehicles had stopped directly in front of Cheongdam Noodle House. Not ordinary expensive cars. These were the kind of vehicles associated with powerful people. Dangerous people. Their dark windows reflected the gray morning sky while the engines remained running quietly beneath the cold air. Nobody inside the restaurant spoke. Even Mr. Beck had gone visibly pale. Then the middle vehicle door opened. A tall man stepped out slowly. Everything about him radiated control. He wore a long black coat over dark clothing, and despite the cold weather, he moved with calm confidence that immediately changed the atmosphere around him. Several suited men stepped out behind him. Bodyguards. There was no doubt about it. Customers began whispering nervously. Who are they? Is this police? No. They don't look like police. Mina stood completely still behind the counter. Something deep inside her already knew this had something to do with the old man from last night. The tall man lifted his eyes toward the restaurant, and suddenly the entire room felt colder. His face remained calm and unreadable, but there was something dangerous hidden beneath that calmness. The kind of danger that never needed to raise its voice. He entered the restaurant slowly. Every suited man behind him remained outside except one. Mr. Beck hurried forward instantly with forced politeness. "Welcome, sir," he said nervously. "Please come in." The man ignored him completely. His eyes moved calmly across the restaurant, searching. Then they landed on Mina. The tension inside the room tightened immediately. The man walked toward her slowly while the entire restaurant watched in silence. Mina's heartbeat became painfully loud. When he finally stopped in front of her, several long seconds passed without either of them speaking. Then finally he spoke. "Park Mina." His voice was low, calm, and controlled.
Mina Svaloved Keifuli.
"Yes." The man gave a small nod. "My name is Kwon Seo-jun." The name alone visibly affected Mr. Beck. The manager's face lost all remaining color. Even Jeon looked shocked now. Mina, however, did not understand why, until Seo-jun spoke again. "My father visited this restaurant last night." The world around Mina suddenly felt very still. Immediately she remembered the worn jacket, the cracked shoes, the quiet voice, the black vehicles waiting silently in the rain. "That was your father?" she asked before she could stop herself. "Yes." The answer came calmly, but something about the way everyone else reacted made the tension even worse. One customer near the entrance hurriedly lowered his head the moment he heard the Kwon name. Fear spread silently through the restaurant, and Mina finally realized something terrifying. This man was not ordinary, not even close. Seo-jun studied her carefully. "My father told me everything that happened here." Mina's chest tightened instantly. For one horrible second, she wondered if she had somehow offended the old man without realizing it. But Seo-jun continued speaking calmly. "He said you defended him when others treated him with disrespect."
Mina blinked softly.
Behind her, Mr. Beck looked like he might faint. Seo-jun's expression remained unreadable. "My father has a habit," he said slowly. "Sometimes he leaves home dressed as an ordinary man. He walks through the city alone because he believes power prevents people from showing their true nature." Nobody inside the restaurant moved. Nobody even breathed loudly. "He told me," Seo-jun continued, "that most people failed that test yesterday." His eyes shifted briefly toward Mr. Beck. The manager immediately lowered his head. Sweat glistened near his forehead. Then Seo-jun looked back at Mina. "And he told me you did not." Mina did not know what to say, because somehow hearing those words felt heavier than fear itself. Seo-jun slowly reached into his coat pocket and removed a thick cream-colored envelope. He held it toward her. "My father asked me to give you this." Mina stared uncertainly at the envelope. "What is it?" "Compensation," Seo-jun replied calmly. "For your kindness." Immediately, Mina shook her head. "No, I can't accept this." "You can. I only bought him dinner, and that mattered to him." His voice remained calm, but there was unmistakable sincerity beneath the words now.
Mina hesitated.
Something about accepting money felt wrong. She had not helped the old man expecting a reward. She helped him because he was hungry. That was all. Seo-jun seemed to understand exactly what she was thinking. "My father is not rewarding you because you fed him," he said quietly. Mina looked at him. He is rewarding you because you treated him with dignity when nobody else did. The words landed heavily across the restaurant. Even Mr. Beck looked ashamed now. Slowly, Mina accepted the envelope. The paper felt heavy inside her trembling hands. Too heavy. Carefully, she opened it slightly, then froze. Her breathing stopped completely. Inside was more money than she had seen in years. Her fingers trembled immediately. This is too much. It will cover your mother's treatment. Mina's eyes lifted sharply toward Seojun. For the first time since entering the restaurant, something softer appeared in his expression. My father asked me to learn about you, he said quietly. I know about the hospital bills. Emotion rose violently into Mina's chest. Suddenly, the restaurant around her became blurry. Not because of fear, because she was trying desperately not to cry. For months she had carried everything alone. The stress, the exhaustion, the fear of losing her mother. And now somehow, a stranger had seen her pain without her ever speaking about it. You helped my father during a moment when he felt invisible, Seojun said quietly. He will never forget that. A tear escaped before Mina could stop it. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. I don't know what to say. For the first time, Seojun's expression softened slightly. You do not need to say anything. The restaurant remained completely silent as Mina held the envelope tightly against her chest. And in that moment, she finally understood something terrifying. The hungry old man she defended the night before belonged to one of the most powerful families in Seoul. That night, Mina stood outside the massive black gates for nearly a full minute before gathering the courage to step forward. Cold wind moved softly through the trees surrounding the estate while golden lights glowed warmly beyond the walls. Everything about the place radiated quiet wealth. Not the loud kind that demanded attention, but the kind powerful families carried naturally after generations of influence. Mina tightened her grip around her coat nervously. Even standing here felt unreal. Less than a week earlier, she had been calculating whether she could afford extra bus fare home after work. Now she was standing outside the private estate of one of the most feared families in Seoul because she bought an old man dinner. Life suddenly felt impossible to predict. One of the security guards approached calmly. Park Mina SSI? She nodded carefully. They are expecting you. The enormous gates slowly opened. Mina stepped inside. Immediately, the outside world seemed to disappear behind her. The estate grounds stretched beautifully beneath soft evening lights. Stone pathways curved around carefully maintained gardens while a quiet fountain reflected the glow from the mansion ahead. Everything looked elegant without feeling excessive. Still, Mina suddenly became painfully aware of her inexpensive shoes and simple black coat. She did not belong in places like this. Another guard opened the main entrance before she could even touch the door. Warm air wrapped around her immediately. The interior was breathtaking. Dark polished wood lined the walls beneath soft golden lighting, while expensive artwork hung carefully throughout the massive hallway. The house smelled faintly of tea and cedar wood, creating an atmosphere that somehow felt both luxurious and strangely peaceful. A woman dressed neatly in black approached her politely. This way, please. Mina followed quietly through the estate, trying not to stare too obviously at everything around her. But what surprised her most was not the wealth. It was the silence. The house did not feel chaotic or arrogant like she expected powerful homes to feel. Felt controlled, disciplined, almost lonely. Eventually, the woman stopped outside a large pair of wooden doors. Chairman Kwan is waiting for you. Chairman. The title alone tightened Mina's chest. Before she could respond, the doors slowly opened. The old man sat near the window beside a low wooden table overlooking the glowing Seoul skyline. Tonight, he looked completely different. Gone were the faded jacket and worn shoes. He now wore elegant dark clothing beneath a traditional Korean cardigan, and his silver hair was neatly styled beneath the warm room lighting. Yet despite the expensive surroundings, his eyes remained exactly the same. Calm, sharp, gentle, and somehow, seeing that familiarity immediately eased some of Mina's nervousness. The old man smiled softly when he saw her. Park Mina. His voice carried genuine warmth.
Mina boved deeply.
Good evening, sir. No, he said gently.
Come sit.
She obeyed carefully, lowering herself onto the cushion across from him. For several seconds, neither spoke. Chairman Kwan slowly poured tea into 2 cups with calm, steady movements. I worried you might not come, he admitted quietly.
Mina hesitated.
I almost didn't. A faint smile touched his face. That is understandable. He handed her a warm teacup carefully. Up close, Mina noticed something she had missed before. The old man carried enormous presence without making any effort to dominate the room. The kind of natural authority people developed after spending years being obeyed. And yet, strangely, she still did not fear him the way she feared Seo-jun. Chairman Kwan noticed her studying him. You have questions, he said calmly.
Mina leghed nervosely.
I think I have too many. That is fair. He took a slow sip of tea before continuing. My name is Kwan Jae-min.
Mina nodded quietly.
Even the name sounded important. Seo-jun told me you sometimes walk through the city dressed like an ordinary person, she said carefully.
Ido.
Why? Chairman Kwan looked toward the city lights outside the window. Because power creates distance, he answered softly. When people fear you, they stop showing you who they truly are. The words settled heavily between them. So you disguise yourself? A small smile appeared. Not exactly. I simply remove the things people respect. Mina immediately thought about the faded jacket, the cracked shoes, the cloth bag, and suddenly, she understood something deeply uncomfortable. People had not rejected him because he was poor. They rejected him because they believed he was powerless. Chairman Kwan studied her expression quietly. You understand now. Mina lowered her eyes slightly. I think I do. Silence settled softly through the room again. Then the old man surprised her completely. You reminded me of my wife. Mina looked up immediately. Seo-jun had said the same thing earlier. Chairman Kwan smiled faintly at her confusion. She was very much like you, he said quietly. Kind even when life gave her reasons not to be. Something emotional flickered behind his eyes briefly before disappearing again. She used to tell Seo-jun something when he was young, he continued. The true measure of a person appears when kindness becomes inconvenient. Mina felt those words settle directly into her chest. Because kindness had become inconvenient for her a long time ago. Still, she chose it anyway. Chairman Kwan leaned back slightly. Last night, you spent money you could not spare on a stranger. Mina looked down quietly at her tea. He looked hungry. That is exactly my point. His voice remained gentle, but admiration rested beneath the words now. Most people only help when helping costs them nothing. Mina did not know how to answer that, because honestly, she never considered herself extraordinary. She was tired, overworked, often afraid, but she simply could not watch another person suffer in front of her without doing something. Chairman Kwan seemed to understand that instinct perfectly. You know, he said softly, people fear men like my son. Mina immediately believed that. But fear is easy, he continued. Kindness is far rarer. For the first time since arriving, Mina relaxed slightly. The conversation no longer felt dangerous. It felt human. Then the old man asked quietly, How is your mother? Emotion tightened inside Mina's chest again instantly. She's stable, Mina answered softly. The treatments are helping.
I'm glad.
Mina hesitated before speaking again. The money you sent, I still don't know how to thank you properly. Chairman Kwan shook his head immediately. You owe me no gratitude. But it's too much. No, he replied calmly. It is appropriate. Mina frowned slightly. For one meal, the old man smiled gently. You still think this was about soup? That answer confused her even more. Chairman Kwan placed his tea cup down carefully before meeting her eyes fully. When a person has power, he said quietly, they begin doubting whether kindness around them is genuine. People become careful, calculated. Everyone wants something. His gaze remained steady on hers. But last night, you protected a stranger when you believed he had nothing to offer you in return. Mina's heartbeat slowed slightly as understanding finally settled deeper inside her. It was never about the food. It was about sincerity. About humanity without calculation. Chairman Kwan's expression softened again. My wife believed people like you kept the world from becoming completely cold. The room fell silent after that. Outside the enormous windows, Seoul shimmered endlessly beneath the dark night sky. And for the first time in a very long while, Mina felt seen. The drive back through Seoul was quiet. Rain drifted softly across the city windows while blurred lights stretched endlessly through the night like rivers of gold and white. Mina sat silently in the back seat of the black vehicle, watching the streets pass while trying to process everything that had happened over the past few days. Nothing about her life felt ordinary anymore. Less than a week earlier, she had simply been an exhausted waitress struggling to survive another month of hospital bills and endless double shifts. Now she had shared tea with one of the most powerful men in Seoul. Life could change direction so quickly. Beside her, Kwon Seo-jun remained focused on the road ahead, one hand resting calmly against the steering wheel. Even in silence, he carried the same controlled presence that made entire rooms tense the moment he entered them. But tonight, Mina noticed something different. He looked tired. Not physically. Something deeper than that. The exhaustion of someone who had spent too many years carrying responsibilities nobody else could understand. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Then finally, Seo-jun glanced toward her briefly. You're quiet. Mina laughed softly beneath her breath. I think my brain stopped functioning hours ago. To her surprise, the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. That's understandable. She looked back out the window again before speaking carefully. Can I ask you something honestly? You already do. That answer almost made her smile.
Mina hesitated bri.
Why does your father trust people so easily? Seojun's eyes remained on the road. He doesn't. But he trusted me.
No. Seohun corrected calmly.
He observed you. Rain tapped softly against the windshield. My father spent most of his life surrounded by ambitious people, Seo-jun continued quietly. People who wanted access, money, influence, protection. After enough years, sincerity becomes difficult to recognize. He paused slightly. That's why yesterday mattered to him. Mina lowered her gaze quietly, because the truth was, she still did not see herself as extraordinary. She simply did what felt right. Seo-jun glanced toward her again. You really thought he was poor? Yes. And you still helped him. Mina frowned slightly. Was I supposed to need another reason? For the first time since meeting her, Seo-jun genuinely looked caught off guard. Then slowly, another rare smile appeared. Small, brief, real. That, he said quietly, is exactly why my father likes you. Silence settled comfortably between them again as the vehicle moved deeper through the glowing city streets. When they finally arrived outside Mina's apartment building, she immediately felt embarrassed. Compared to the world Seo-jun came from, this neighborhood probably looked painfully small. Old buildings, flickering signs, narrow stairways, nothing elegant, nothing impressive. But to her surprise, Seo-jun showed no judgment at all. Instead, his eyes quietly studied the aging apartment building before returning to her. You live here alone?
Mina nodded.
For a brief moment, something unreadable crossed his expression. Then he said quietly, that must feel lonely sometimes. The gentleness in his voice surprised her. Because somehow, beneath his calm exterior, Mina sensed that Seo-jun understood loneliness very well himself. She opened the vehicle door slowly. Thank you for dinner, she said politely. And thank you, he replied, for giving my father a peaceful evening. Mina stepped outside before turning back toward him. Good night, Seo-jun. Good night, Park Mina. The black vehicle remained parked outside until she safely entered the building. Only then did it finally drive away. Inside her apartment, Mina leaned quietly against the door after entering. The room was still tiny, still cold, still ordinary. But somehow, it no longer felt hopeless. For the first time in months, something unfamiliar had quietly entered her life. Hope. The next morning, Mina visited the hospital before work. Her mother looked noticeably stronger already. Color had slowly begun returning to her face, and for the first time in weeks, her smile seemed less tired. "Mina," her mother said softly, "you look happier today." Mina sat beside the bed peeling tangerines carefully.
Doi.
Yes. Her mother studied her closely. Something changed. Mina smiled faintly without answering immediately. Maybe something had changed. Not only around her. Inside her too. As they talked quietly together, Mina realized something important. The money Chairman Kwan gave her would help enormously. But it was not the thing that affected her most. It was the reminder that kindness still mattered. That compassion was not weakness. That even small acts could reach farther than people imagined. Later that evening, Mina returned to Cheongdam Noodle House for work. The restaurant looked exactly the same. Customers still complained. Bowls still clattered endlessly. Mr. Beck still barked instructions from behind the counter. And yet everything felt different now. Because Mina no longer carried the same heaviness inside her chest. At one point during the shift, the restaurant door opened again. An elderly man stepped slowly inside, lightly soaked from rain outside. Immediately, several customers glanced at him before quickly looking away again.
Mina från Spri.
Then quietly, she smiled. "Welcome," she said warmly. And this time, she did not wait for anyone else to decide whether he belonged there. Hours later, after her shift finally ended, Mina stepped outside into the cool Seoul night. The city stretched endlessly around her. Bright lights, crowded streets, strangers hurrying past each other carrying invisible burdens nobody else could see. Millions of people silently hoping someone would notice their existence. Mina stood near the bus stop watching traffic move through rain-covered streets. Then slowly, she remembered something Chairman Kwan had told her. The world changes people very quickly. He was right. Cities made people colder. Pain made people harder. Exhaustion made people selfish. And yet somehow, despite everything, kindness still survived. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, in ordinary moments, in small decisions, in choosing humanity when nobody important seemed to be watching. Mina finally understood the real terrifying truth hidden inside everything that happened. It was not that the old man belonged to a powerful family. It was this: most people only show kindness after discovering someone is important. Very few offer kindness first. And that difference changes everything. A bus finally pulled up beside the sidewalk with a soft mechanical hiss. Mina stepped inside and took a seat near the window. As the glowing city lights passed across the glass beside her, she closed her eyes briefly and allowed herself a small, peaceful smile. Tomorrow would still be difficult. Life would still be exhausting. But somewhere in this enormous city, an old man was drinking warm tea peacefully because one exhausted waitress chose compassion over indifference. And somewhere else, a feared man who frightened entire rooms had smiled genuinely for the first time in a very long while. All because of one simple act. One bowl of soup. One moment of kindness without conditions. The bus disappeared quietly into the glowing Seoul night while rain continued falling softly across the city. And life moved forward, the way it always does. And somewhere beyond the glowing lights of Seoul, life continued moving quietly forward. People hurried through crowded streets carrying invisible pain. Some searching for money. Some searching for power. Some simply searching for one reason to keep going another day. But hidden among millions of ordinary moments, kindness still survived. Quietly, stubbornly, in people like Mina. Because in the end, the terrifying truth was never that the hungry old man belonged to a powerful family. The real terrifying truth was this: most people only show kindness after discovering someone is important. Very few choose kindness first. And maybe that is why one small bowl of soup changed so many lives. Not because it impressed powerful people, but because it proved something rare still existed in a world growing colder every day. Compassion without calculation. humanity without conditions. And perhaps that is the kind of strength the world needs most. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Afro-Korea Untold for more emotional stories filled with mystery, humanity, and unforgettable twists. And before you go, tell me in the comments, do you think Mina would have helped the old man if she knew who he really was from the beginning? Or was her kindness powerful precisely because she didn't know? I'll be reading your thoughts. Until the next story, choose kindness anyway.